I think we're,
Still on
I
now?
think we're, yes, we're going up. Yes. Okay, very good.
You good?
Sorry for that, but yes, looks like we're live.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Not a problem. Have a good one.
Recommend to start the meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you please do the roll call
Absolutely. Chairman Marlon Barr,
here?
Member Steve Carter,
Present.
Member Susan Steiner.
Here.
Member Chris Hunt Hendrickson,
Here.
and Member Sharon Houston.
Okay, the commission will conduct a public hearing to receive citizens' comment on the following proposals. Map amendment rezoning 1 and map amendment rezoning 2.
Typically, what I would suggest is you start with hearing from the applicant,
Mhm.
just have them give a brief presentation.
Okay.
And
Okay, so to be quite honest with you, we're kind of still in the exploring stages, but our plan, so let's start with the 20 acres. Our plan, and we also want to hear from you, we want ideas from you as well, but like we have 4 lots that are surveyed or being surveyed by Alpha Engineering. I've been talking to Steve a little bit about this, and this is at the bottom part of our land. So originally we thought about rentals. I think we're going away from that. So what we want to do is put like single family homes, like maybe a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We've kind of looked at, and then he has a little bit of experience in excavating work, so we would put some sweat equity in it because we know we've done a little bit of research financially, and it's not easy. I mean, obviously we're not looking to get rich, but we want to make money at this. So our plan is to put nice homes there and maybe do 1 or 2, sell that, and then just keep moving along. We started with our survey, we started kind of at the bottom of our property because the top has a really, really nice view of the lake. So we're going to gradually work our way up is the plan. But also kind of wanted to talk to you guys and see what the need is, or what Sunrise Beach is looking for, or maybe it is rentals. I mean, I have some rentals now, and I know it could be a lot of work. So I don't know if that's the direction we want to go, but that's kind of where.
And by the rezoning from R1 to R2, our understanding was that if we want to put a duplex up, I think R2 allows us to do that, where R1 did not.
Yeah, so we thought, we wanted to have that option to put a duplex up, and we don't know yet whether that would be for sale or whether we would have that deal of rental. So that's where we're at, and it's kind of the same. I have the 5 acres separate that we have 2 rentals on, and it's kind of the same thing there, that I would either put up a home and sell that lot or make that a rental. So that's kind of, because it was our understanding that Sunrise Beach was in need of more housing and more homes, and we'd rather have them here, so as opposed to going to Lori, because they're putting in a rather large apartment complex, I heard too. So but we love Sunrise Beach, and we've been our lake house here for 10 years. It's actually on Camden Pass, so it's Lake Road 35. So and we want to someday, when I hopefully retire, we want to be able to spend a lot more time down here. So so that's kind of where we're at right now.
Beginning stages.
Beginning stages, yes.
Well, Steve, you probably looked into this, but if you go to R2, can you still do single family homes or do you have to do multifamily?
I'm not sure. I'm
I thought I read online where it said R2 allowed everything that R1 did.
I think so. I just have to double check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it does.
Yeah. I would.
That was kind of what I'm
I was gonna
getting at.
say.
You don't want to change to R2 and
Exactly.
then not be able to do single family
Yeah,
homes.
that would definitely be something that I would want to.
I'll get an answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, because,
But we wanted just to have that option.
Right.
Sure.
To be able to put a duplex up.
no, I understand,
When you-
especially 20 acres. It's,
When you're talking
Yeah.
about rentals, are you talking about term rentals, lease type rentals, or are you talking about VRBO?
No, probably more like, so my son lives down here and works at Frankie lives.
Right.
And he said, we're always looking for rentals for
Right.
summer help.
Yes.
Well, we understand that means, well, it's probably only a 4 or 5 month deal. And that
Right.
place is gonna sit. We don't know if that's feasible for us to do that.
Right.
Yeah, that's why
And I
I
don't
was
wanna
curious
throw
whether it
up-
was gonna be on a,
More than likely it'd be a rental for family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. More of a
Year
long
an
term.
annual.
A long term annual rental, I think, because the problem with short term too is we're 6 hours away right now.
Yeah.
And we do have your son that, but that's asking a lot. So we don't have somebody right here that could manage that
Right.
every day. So it would be long term, more long term probably. But what we do, we want to make sure that it's, aesthetically nice and, we don't want to just throw up cheap. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
What, with the single family homes, are you talking about a 2 or 3 bedroom or
2 or
2
3.
bedroom?
Yeah,
Two
three
bath,
bedroom,
something like
2
that.
bath. Yeah, we
Yeah.
looked at some modulars that are
Mhm.
really, really nice, and they're actually no different than a stick built. They're just built
Built
on location, and we've looked at, and those are a little bit less expensive per square foot. So
And we do have something in there in the planning and zoning about modulars. Which one is good, modular or manufactured?
modular's good. Manufacturer, you don't
Right, it
allow.
can't
in
have
there.
wheels and axles,
Right.
because we do not allow
Right.
trailers.
Needs a
Right.
foundation.
Yeah, it has to have a foundation. Is my under
Yes.
my
Yes.
understanding. Yep.
Alright,
So we do know that, and I don't think we want to put, trailers or
Is
manufactured
the
homes.
1,000 square foot limitation still in effect?
Yes.
That was a question we had on the 1,000 square foot. Is it interior square footage? Or is it the exterior if there's a deck on it and all that?
under roof.
I'd have
On the
to.
roof?
Under it, but
Okay.
maybe heating, I believe, also.
It's supposed to be, it doesn't say, but it should be livable space. But I know that we've had this issue come up before,
Because
and
we
it
looked
has
at
to be
one-
attached to the
You're
roof.
talking about
We
from
looked at one
minimum?
earlier
Yes.
that was 960 square feet, and it was really, really nice. But we're like,
No, we're sure.
could we add a covered
Deck,
deck,
porch.
or what, or how?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that's the option we want to go with, but it was super nice. It was more like a cabin type feel.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't gotten around to updating the zoning yet, but I mean, that is something that we may have to consider because I think Camden County might have changed their amount from 1,000 and made it lower.
Yeah,
Now that the tiny homes are,
are becoming really, really popular.
yes,
Yeah.
and the container homes and all that, so.
So that's our, that's our plan now. And it's not gonna be like 6 homes and, it's gonna be,
Well, 20 acres, you
One.
can put several homes in
yeah,
that.
part of that's a ravine,
Part
it's
of
not all
Okay.
Pretty
buildable.
steep.
Yeah,
Well, other than going to the multi-family style, nothing else you've mentioned requires any action at all, right? It's already zoned R1.
Right.
So unless you
Correct.
decided to
correct.
go to a
Right.
multi-unit and made that decision, there's really no reason to even pursue a zoning change in advance of that, right? There's an expense to that.
Right, I mean, I guess I already applied and sent the check, so I wanted
Okay,
to.
well,
I wanted-
and you're certainly welcome to do that. I'm just
So you're
saying,
saying I just threw away my.
well, nothing you mentioned requires.
We just
any
wanted to
action other
have
than-
that, you're correct.
No.
We just wanted to know and not go down the road and then all of a sudden be like, oh, you can't do that. But it was my understanding that R1, you could do everything in R1 that you could do in R2. So it's just, but I don't know if that's true. I need to make sure that that's
You can do
True.
everything in R2.
two.
Yes.
Excuse me.
That's in
Yeah,
R1. Yeah, that would be,
Yeah, I verified that. The
Yeah.
R1, you can do single family
Single
residential.
family in R2.
but R2, you can do duplex
Duplex
or single family.
or quadplex up to 4, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, so
So if you take the R2 zoning, you're just not gonna know. What you're asking us is that if you go with R2 right now, and then you decide just to put single family homes in there,
we're fine.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But if
But if we
you
decide
choose
to do
duplexes,
duplex,
you're fine too.
We're fine,
I got you.
correct, which we might.
Well, and one of the reasons we're looking at starting where we're starting at is that the city sewer just went through. They kind of already cleared out a big
You're
area
welcome.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah, we let them put the sewer on our property, so they kind of went diagonally up the lift station and all the way on our property.
Good
So,
move.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope, yeah. So we're
Yeah.
surrounded by water and sewer now, which is nice.
That was a good move.
Yeah. But yeah, no, our other reason for coming to this meeting, because I do realize, yeah, like you made a good point about that R1, R2, but what does the city need? What does the city want? What does the city frown on? What are you not wanting? Or is there any, I mean, you said they need single family homes. Is that what Sunrise Beach?
Any,
You need
we
a-
need apartments, we need duplexes, we
Yeah.
need single family.
I don't think there's
Lower
anything that's been
price.
in your suggestion that
That
Yeah.
would be,
would be
You know,
detrimental.
we don't,
We need
we
to
don't
look
need any
more
$1 million
into-
homes.
yeah, no.
People have expressed to me that they don't want like a transient type of situation where people working on the other side of the lake are coming over to like rent controlled,
Oh,
unmanaged vagrant type
right.
dilapidated housing complexes.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
know.
gonna guard against that diligently because of the
Yeah.
property values of that.
Right.
But everybody recognizes the need for affordable is the term everybody uses. Well, that's relative these days.
Yeah.
But what they
Yeah,
don't
so what
want
is-
is apartment complexes that are run down that bring in the corresponding crime and mismanagement and that type of thing. Nobody's gonna allow that here.
No,
It's
we
not
don't
gonna
want that.
Yeah. your
I don't
house-
wanna
your house
manage
is right around the corner.
My house is around the corner and I don't wanna manage it. I don't wanna,
There's a compromise here somewhere between affordable and subsidized is what people have in their
Yeah.
mind, that they're gonna wind up fitting the bill for people that are working on the other side of the lake and coming here to live in like a flop house type thing. And people are dead set against that. You'll never get something like that in
Yeah.
Sunrise Beach.
cause it's our understanding. I mean, we talked to somebody today and they're like, if you advertise something for under like 250, 260, that you would have multiple, but
People that-
I haven't bought a house for a long time, and that seems like a lot of money still to me, but times have changed, so. But I don't think we'd be able to do anything for less than, like, to have a resale value at 240, 250 would probably.
And that
be-
would be low.
Yeah.
It would be.
The median's,
what I-
Nowadays.
median's
Well, I've-
400,
Yes.
400
I was gonna
plus.
say, to build a stick-built house, I mean, I got quoted like $300,000, and I was like, I don't think we could turn around and sell that,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I wanna run that risk, but
Right.
we'll see.
I think there's a couple of houses just finished in Hawk Lake that one that's probably up in the 300 something
I
range.
think
300,
it's
and they're off
295.
the
They're off
lake,
water.
but yeah,
Right?
okay.
Does the staff want to give the recommendations here?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief report here. It's my first meeting since I've been here, so glad to be here. Whenever we have a planning and zoning meeting, it means typically that we have people interested in building and developing our community, which is always a good good thing to have. So from a rezoning perspective, it requires the public hearing, which of course we're in the middle of it right now. When you try to evaluate whether or not this meets our standards, you try to look at your comprehensive plan, which was adopted back in 2009. And I reviewed it a bit. There is a recommendation for more affordable housing even back then in 2009. As far as the specific site here, I guess Polylift actually wasn't here in 2009, if I'm thinking correctly, and maybe I'm wrong. But it looked like that property was actually zoned agricultural back then.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Regardless, the neighborhood, so to speak, obviously Polylift is a commercial operation. There's kind of a sprinkling there's some commercial operations along Beechwood. There is some duplexes, I think at least one apartment building. And so there is kind of a mix. And again, I'm new and you guys are you're the commission. I think my perspective is you wouldn't want to have a higher density residential probably in the lakefront areas. You wouldn't also look to put them in more of your established neighborhoods that are closer to the lake and so forth. But this property, frankly, in my opinion, is suits it pretty well. It's along Beechwood. It's not right on the lake. And when I say this property, I mean both the 20 acres and the other piece. There's already, I think, a trailer and another house.
Ranch style house.
Right.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the property is suited for it. And then also the need for affordable housing of all types is pretty well. I think it's generally understood we need that. So, yes, staff certainly would have no objection to it. And you always kind of want to wait and see what sort of public comment you get. It doesn't look like tonight we have any.
I don't think there's
So
anything close that's going to have much of a public impact.
sure.
Does that probably back up to that trailer and that?
It's the 20 acres is right
Right
across
across the road.
right across the road. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it does. And we have thought about Polylift, whether that's gonna,
So
when
right
we get
across
up
the road.
towards the top, the noise and whether that's gonna detract from potential buyers. But I think we're far enough away that we'd be okay. So
I mean, they have a few trailers and stuff in and out of there hauling the boats and stuff, but as far as like a regular noise, we don't get many complaints in that.
don't shut. Yeah.
That's not manufacturing there, is
Uh-uh.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Just more
manufacturing's up
storage.
on the other end.
Oh, it is just more storage. They're not
Yeah.
I don't think
actually
they build
building.
No, we don't
anything
build
here.
that.
Yeah, there's some,
okay.
Do they?
oh yeah.
Oh,
I was
Well,
gonna say, I thought I saw
They build in
something
that big building.
In the building.
Yeah.
in the building.
They got
So,
metal and
It's
stuff
standard
down along
things.
where you guys are, but
Yeah.
and actually there's an office building across from you guys.
Crossing your trailer.
trailer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But no, every time we drive by there, everybody seems super friendly and nice, so we've never had any issues. So, yeah. But I mean, that's good to know. But,
Questions, anybody?
All mine's been answered.
Is there actually something that requires action on
Well,
this tonight? or-
if they would like to change the rezoning, you're gonna have to vote on that.
Yeah. So just to be
And that's a
clear,
recommendation.
it is a recommendation. And what happens is planning and zoning recommends yay or nay. Regardless, either way, it goes to the board of trustees. It would be brought to the board at the meeting next Monday night.
This coming Monday would be, okay. So, I make a motion that we accept the R2 on both pieces of land.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just like I said, so it will go to the Board of Trustees next meeting, and actually there'll be an ordinance drafted for that. And of course, you're free to be here. You don't have to be.
We don't, okay.
Right. I always like the applicant to at least be at the planning and zoning meeting. For a more controversial development or, a little bit more intense, you might say, I always like the applicant to be here, but I know you guys are out of town. Susan, you're the chair. Do you feel a need for them to be?
I don't think so. I mean, both Steve and I are on the board,
On the board,
so
okay.
we will be
You can
bringing
relay.
this up
Yeah.
to a vote at the board meeting on Monday. And I can't even imagine why anybody would not vote for this. I mean,
No, this is,
this is exactly what
Yeah.
this city needs, is more housing. So, I mean, and obviously we're trying to keep the city looking nice and
Right.
yeah.
progress and everything.
And I don't see
So,
any kind of a detrimental impact at
No,
all.
not at all.
I mean, there's not going to be enough traffic flow and
No,
any of that.
Especially, it's probably gonna be a slower process, so it's not,
Now, you will not have to get a building permit from us, correct? But you will have to go through the fire department for safety.
okay.
Yeah, you would need a zoning permit. And so what that is if you want to build a single family, whatever structure it is, you have to apply for a zoning permit. It's pretty simple, but it basically puts down the square footage, a very basic site plan where the building will sit on the property, and then we check it for compliance with the zoning code setbacks,
Okay.
such stuff like that. So it is very basic. Once you have the zoning permit from the city here, then you go to the fire district, and they do require an actual building permit.
It's very painless, easy.
Painless.
Yes.
Okay. And I can just talk to you, Steve, about when we get to that point, or
Sure.
you can direct me.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Do we have anything else on the agenda?
The subdivision.
The subdivision. Oh, that's a separate item, okay. Oh, is it? Wait a minute.
Yeah, it is.
So the first two are rezoning, and then the subdivision. So where is this in?
Yeah,
Park City?
let me explain that.
Okay.
So, the zoning code requires that any subdivision, come to planning and zoning, and then ultimately the board of trustees. And so here we have 4 lots, and so they have to get a separate approval from you all as far as subdivision go. Now, a subdivision, of course, is a little bit different story. It's really doesn't deal with the use of the property. It's more about, dividing the land and so forth. Our zoning code has some provisions relating to subdivisions, but they're not what I would say call particularly thorough, especially when it comes to these smaller developments. So I wrote a report. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I just want to kind of highlight it. There were some setback issues. So the plat as it was presented does not meet the R2 zoning district setbacks. And so it would need to be modified. I think the R2 district setbacks are 25-foot front, 14-foot side corner, 10-foot side, 15-foot rear. So yeah, that would have to change before you got final approvals. And then these are kind of, I think, somewhat minor comments, but the actual location of water and sewer utilities are not shown on the plat. Now, I know there are water and sewer to that property. Of course, you gave easements and so forth.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that can be kind of disregarded. Stormwater drainage. Again, I'm new here. In my experience,
There's one there.
typically when you are developing land, stormwater becomes a question mark, right? What are you going to do, and how are you going to handle the storm? And so there are no provisions here. We don't, at least in my interpretation of the code, there's not a strict requirement for it. if you were doing a bigger layout, let's say it was 25 lot subdivision and so forth, yes, you would have to have stormwater. Correct. Here, I mean, again, my interpretation would say that you don't have to have, it's not a strict requirement. And I think there's one other, oh yeah, the egress easement. We talked about that. It is sufficient by our code, in order to get to those 2 lots, right? And so then it becomes kind of a question mark as to what it would actually be. Is it a lane? Is it a road? I don't think your intention is not to build it as a public street. Is that right?
Right.
What you're talking about, is that we're down Old Sunrise Acres Road, where they've already done some excavation back in there?
Yeah, so we would be just a little bit.
When you drop down the hill, it's on the right-hand side.
No,
this
but yeah, I know what you're talking about. We're on the left then.
Okay.
Yes.
So the other question I have, you're wanting to do a new subdivision here. Has anybody checked to see if that is actually in Sunrise Acres subdivision? Because that's on Sunrise Acres Road.
Yeah.
That may be in the Sunrise Acres subdivision.
Does that have an HOA?
No, I mean, just to be clear
It
that,
does, but it doesn't.
so the survey, so the through their survey, they provided a subdivision plat. And I mean, there's no reference to Sunrise Acres subdivision here. It appears to be what I would call an unplatted lot, that 20 acres that you own. It doesn't appear to be part of any subdivision. Now it might be adjacent to it.
Yeah.
But
Well, Sunrise Acres may be on the other side.
Yeah,
Not on
the other
that
side.
Oh, it could, okay.
I just wanted to, make sure that.
Sure.
No, that's good.
But I'm looking at the plat, and really what they have is there's 2 lots that would front upon Old Sunrise Acres Road, and then there's 2 that would be accessed. It would be kind of to the rear of the property they want to subdivide, and there's that egress easement.
Right.
And it's sufficient. It is. It just, again, kind of raised a question over. I guess I'd kind of throw it back to you all from a planning and zoning standpoint. Is you guys want to see public dedicated streets, or are you okay with,
On that street,
easement
there's only going to be
access?
2 houses, right?
I know. I think to me it seems like it's fine, but
Right.
I just thought I'd raise a question.
Are you planning like gravel road just to the house?
Yeah.
So you
Because
don't
it
think
drops
that-
off quite a bit after
After
that, so
that,
I don't think
yeah.
we're gonna go further that direction at this.
Right.
So-
How do you feel about about selling property that has gravel road, a brand new house, but sorry, you're gonna have a gravel road? Do you think that's going to,
You live on a gravel road.
I mean, we
Yeah,
hear that
I was gonna say.
from Hawk Lake,
Well, because there is no.
because there is no.
It's mud.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how you talk about that ahead of time, if when you're building houses and calling it a subdivision, yeah, you obviously are gonna have the plan ahead of time saying, for anybody that wants to buy, that you're not promising they're gonna have a
Right.
asphalt driveway.
How many
Yeah.
feet is that road?
So,
But it'd be different if it's a duplex.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah.
That I didn't look at.
Yeah, it'll be hard to read.
You might not be able to get it
yeah,
I'm gonna say
higher rent either.
Yeah.
It's just the width of the 2 lots, right?
30,000 per house.
It's
if
45.
they're
might
probably
not,
gonna want asphalt.
It's a
yeah.
wide, but call it about
And
200
that's
foot
an issue
maybe.
everywhere.
So it's 200
around
foot?
here.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
mean, when we
Well,
were
that's
here
pretty short.
buying,
I mean, really.
Yeah,
we wanted
That would be
asphalt.
Yeah.
That would be a relatively short, that might be a.
Yeah,
it's a
I mean,
driveway,
even if you
but,
just had it in front of the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna be coming off of what road to get into this?
Sunrise Acres roads,
Yeah.
correct?
But that road that you're talking about is going to be gravel. It's probably 200 foot, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you got one lot's roughly 100 foot and it's like, so it's not.
Yeah.
and a 20-foot easement or whatever, so you're
Yeah,
talking
I don't think that.
220 feet probably, yeah.
To get to the furthest one.
Yeah, to get to the furthest one.
And when you're talking about water drainage, we don't recommend that in zoning at all.
There's one section of the zoning code that says any subdivision should have a stormwater drainage plan that meets Department of Natural Resources requirements, and I'm really not sure what that refers to. In this one, again, it's a small 4-lot subdivision. There's no existing curb and gutter along the roadsides. It's probably just going to be ditched. But I think the but is you can't develop the property in such a way that's going to create water problems for your neighbors.
Yep.
And that's why I raised the point, and we don't really have a good ordinance there.
All right.
So
That's what I'm getting at. I mean,
This
do we
direction,
call
there
it a
is no neighbors.
subdivision if it's gonna be 4 houses?
There's
You
nothing
know,
on it.
and
And there's nothing, any direction from there.
yeah, and this is just me talking, and it's not specific to this, but I think there certainly are situations where you have to be very careful with your stormwater. It's got to be, accommodated for, and you can't have people that put in parking lots and whatnot, and then, the water just drains off and erodes the downstream property. I don't think this is happening here, but
And for that matter, they don't have a true drawing and plat yet on that property, the 4 in this
We have a
Separate-
preliminary
preliminary.
plat, but not a finalized.
So is
I
it-
would say it's stage.
I think so. Yes.
Something that we would need to request, seeing where the drainage is gonna go or whatever. I mean, I realize when you start talking about those kind of things, you're talking about an engineer drawing up, and then you're getting into a lot of money for that type of thing, but is there an easier way to go about it?
Well, I mean, as far as this, what's your reason for doing the subdivision?
Just to have, so we have individual lots that when we build, we can sell that. So that's why it's surveyed off.
Right, so we can start doing individual lots and sell, yeah.
So in order for him just to do the subdivision, I don't see, if it's unimproved as a subdivision, why there would be any premises for that. Until, they start building, and then at that point, maybe there would be a requirement, but I know the land there, and I
That's
see
no one
no
else
issue.
has it.
There's no neighbors anywhere. The closest house from that's probably close to half mile.
Wasn't there a distinction between a subdivision and a property that's been subdivided, just to make it into smaller, non-contiguous? Right, isn't
See, that's
that
what I'm
like a-
saying, I mean, are we labeling it a subdivision where it has to follow subdivision rules? And I.
Yeah, because if you do an actual
honestly
subdivision, then you're gonna have to go through the whole deal, and you're gonna have to do the whole rule thing.
Yeah, in my experience, there's what you call minor subdivisions and major. And this, I think, is a minor. And minor subdivisions typically don't have a lot of the development requirements on them, such as storm drainage, sidewalks, great example.
Right.
Um,
It would just,
right,
the restrictions would be consistent with probably building codes.
sure.
Yes, yeah, the reason we did it is so we can resell it, so we
Right.
have to have a
Exactly.
lot. I mean, so to me, it doesn't have to be considered a subdivision, but yeah.
Isn't there a way to make smaller parcels of land without designating it a subdivision of a
No.
larger entity?
No, if you divide property, it's a subdivision. It can be 2 lots.
Right.
I took a call today from someone who was going to do that.
That's interesting.
I
You'd
mean,
think
it's-
there would be more of a process to not go down that extensive road. Obviously,
Right.
with 100 acres, it's a different situation than we have here. But to have to designate such a small parcel of land through that process seems tedious.
Well, would that not fit in R2? With 4 or fewer dwelling units such as duplexes, villas, townhouses, fourplexes, or other similar residential structures?
I'm not sure I'm following you actually.
Yeah. Yeah, we're on uncharted ground right here.
Well, I just,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but if it's, you do a subdivision, I think there has to be a base premises set up for like, has to be X amount of square feet, not, RVs not allowed, yada, 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 you know.
And I think that's all in the R2 or the current.
Right, but you would have to adopt that as your subdivision,
Yeah.
like bylaws.
And I didn't realize R2 had different setbacks and stuff than R1. Correct. So we're gonna have to
Yeah,
We're gonna have to
it'd just be a
change it.
simple thing for your surveyor to do.
switch.
Yeah, it's
So. Okay.
So for the purposes of this meeting tonight, are we accepting anything or are we just starting to kick the can?
subdivisions need to go to P and Z first and then get a
Right.
recommendation to the board.
Right. I'd make a motion that we approve the subdivision.
I second it.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Is there just out of curiosity, now it goes to the board, would the board maybe do a little more research on it and say, you know, we're gonna need this or this or this?
Yeah, so before it can be recorded, there are a few things that need to happen. The setbacks have to be changed. I might, the ingress egress easement, this is kind of technical, but it's not, there's no language on the plat that says in favor of who it's granted. It should, in my opinion, be granted to lots 3 and 4. It's just, this kind of, like I say, it's kind of technical. So there are a few like cleanup items I think that need to happen. And then, you know, it goes to the board and then ultimately it has to be signed by the city and recorded. And, you know, what you presented so far was, you know, as you said, preliminary. And it doesn't have to be in a final form when it goes to the board, but it should be cleaned up. I mean, we shouldn't be taking action on something with where the setbacks are wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, so
Or email me those, or we can talk.
yes,
So, yeah.
sure.
New surveyed off is considered R1.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
I think so. Too.
Yeah.
We did not. Yeah. That was correct. Yes.
I just want to give you I'm sorry. I just want to give you a little bit of update on some of the planning and zoning things that I found here. I might just stand up. So I think over here we have a copy of the comprehensive plan. Yeah, it's right here. So this is the comprehensive plan. It was adopted in 2008, and it was fine. I mean, I think it was, you know, they did pretty well with it, but it's 15 years old, actually 16, I guess, and it does need to be updated. There's no question. So when I got here, I talked to Susan, and I looked at some plans, and Lake Ozark, Lake Ozark, in my opinion, did a really nice one, probably in 2020, 2021. And they did it, it looks to be like they used, they had their existing staff work on it, but then they actually used Lake Ozark Council of Governments as, so when you do a comprehensive plan update, you have to have a series or at least a couple of meetings where it's just open house meetings with your citizens. And they say, what do we want? What do we don't want? What do we need? And so forth. And so often you'll see people fill out surveys and such. And it's important. You really need to get that feedback. You know, one thing I've heard people talk about a fair amount is some of the nuisance properties. You know, we do have properties that are in, you know, can be unsightly and so forth. And is that a priority? Is that something we want to address through our zoning code? So you get that feedback. In any case, the problem we got right now is because our council governments, I believe, is very limited. They've gone through some changes. And so I don't know if they would be certainly not immediate assistance. And we could hire some help. I'm not quite ready to basically say it's time for that. Really what I think probably ought to focus on is, as much as I'd like to do it, I think maybe we can set that aside for the time being and really instead work on some, what I think are important updates to the zoning code itself. And such as just what we're talking about tonight, minor and major subdivisions, right? It's not clear how that's handled. This one call I took today is a 2-lot subdivision. It's very simple. And it's still, by law, I believe, has to be approved by the city. I mean, it has to go through that process. But just the actual procedure needs to be better and more clear. Another one I think is important is that there's no site plan requirement. So if we had someone come to town and want to put in a new commercial building of any type, there really isn't any particular provisions that relate to what that site needs to look like. And I think that would be helpful, not only to the city here, but also to the developers, so that they can understand up front, this is what we're going to require. And it's easy for me, if I get those types of calls, to say, here's our requirements, and just shoot them off to the developers, and they send them to their engineers and whoever. I just think it makes it for a better process. There's been a lot of talk about apartment buildings and so forth, and if we ever got a bona fide, like apartment, I've been talking to one developer in particular. Let's just say we had a 60-unit apartment complex proposed. I could manage it, don't get me wrong. I could, but our code would just not be real helpful there. So I honestly think we ought to maybe try to use some of those targeted updates. I'd love to do the comp plan, but it's also a bigger project. So that's my thinking. Last thing before, I stopped talking, the zoning map. I got to start on the zoning map. It hasn't been updated since 2016, and it has bogged down. It's really I didn't get back on it. I'm, pretty familiar with our zoning now. Sorry. And so I had a lot. It's much easier for me to answer some of those questions I get on what the zoning and parcels are, because I'm just starting to know it. But still, the map definitely needs to be updated. That's on me. I'll take care of it. But in any case, that's kind of the basic overview. Comp plan. I mean, how do you all feel about it?
Steve, are you expecting the planning and zoning committee to start having meetings to update the planning and zoning, or what kind of process are you looking at?
Yeah, so these public meetings would be conducted by staff and the consultants, right?
Okay.
And I've been through this process a couple of times, so I do know it pretty well. And it's done a few different ways. This day and age, a lot of it is electronic. I've seen consultants come out with tablets and just pass tablets around, and people, enter their information that way. But that's not so much a planning and zoning commission thing. As we kind of get the draft going and so forth, then yes, there'd be meetings here to review it. If you're going to do it right, I mean, it has to, the most important part again is you've got to have the public feedback. It's got to be based on that. But then, the governing bodies, the commission, and ultimately the board of trustees, have to have their input, of course. So,
Well, I do agree the planning and zoning codes need to be updated. And I think that's a lot more important than the comprehensive plan right now. Because if we're going to draw in more people to either build housing or try to get a hotel or any of the things that we've talked about doing, we gotta have that planning.
We gotta have our guidelines, so
Yes, we have to have the rules and regulations up front,
Right.
and we're missing so many of those. Like I said, the containers. Someone called Steve about putting in what does your city think about a container subdivision? We don't know, we haven't done it. Those tiny home subdivisions, we have a section in our planning and zoning of PUD, which is planned unit development. Have any of us really gone any further with it? So, I mean, I think that's real important for us to get all of that straightened out before we go with more on the comprehensive plan.
Any amendment to the zoning code has to go through you all. There's a public hearing. So there's always a process. You gotta post it, publish it in the newspaper. So honestly, the comp plan is a fair amount of work for P&Z, but those zoning code updates are the same way. I mean, they all run right through you. My plan there is I have written regulations and I'm pretty familiar with it, and so I would kind of cobble together some drafts and I'd show them to Susan, get them into a draft form and then bring them to you. Lauber Municipal Law is our attorney, and they're a municipal law firm. They know planning and zoning. If I needed help, excuse me, obviously I'd go to them and get some legal help. But what I'm talking about is, I mean, these aren't, I wouldn't call them, huge revamps of our code. They're more, I think, them being kind of more targeted. They're just specific guidelines for, again, if you put a commercial center in, what do we require?
Right.
If you're going to do a hotel, that's been talked about, what does it require? So that type of stuff.
And we do have some new maps. I don't know if you all noticed that over there. It really shows the outline of the city much better than what we had over here. So
I'd be interested to know what the actual breakdown on this new map that's developed percentage-wise, R1, R2. It's difficult to discern just even living year round here. It is. I have a copy of this map, but how that actually would break down to what percentage of our land in Sunrise Beach is R1, R2, that might give a different perspective on which way people are going to head.
Yeah, and it should be very simple once you get the math done. The mapper can probably do it pretty easily. Yeah. Well, maybe just kind of close out. If that subdivision that I was talking to today comes forward, there will be a meeting next month. And then by that time, I guess I'd make it my goal to at least try to get one zoning code update kind of on the board for that same meeting. I don't know. I always hate to, I don't want to waste your time and have a meeting just to have a meeting, but if we've already got a subdivision coming forward, then it'd be nice to also try to get at least one update done if possible.
is that how you would do the updates on the planning and zoning? It's just like, okay, today we're only going to look at the subdivision or the commercial and then do an ordinance for that. It goes to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just hit you with time and time again either, but really what I'd like to see is a site plan ordinance. And that one I think I could probably put together pretty quick. And just get started with that. And actually then the minor and major subdivision, that would be pretty simple to do too.
Stephen, sorry to interrupt you, but say if, and I don't think we're ever going to go down this path, but say somebody wanted to put like a small event center, like my daughter-in-law says we need to do down here, and then have, like you could have weddings and then put small little cabins. Is that considered commercial grade then, or what do you have to?
Yeah, that would be
considered commercial. That would be.
Yeah, and that's
I'd
love to
in
see
my
that
lifetime.
price.
I probably.
I mean,
She's like, "Oh, you need to do that with that land," and I'm like,
No, it'd be fun. I'd love to have that project, and just real kind of big picture stuff. You would have to accommodate your drainage in that situation.
That would be big, yeah.
You'd have a hard surface.
There'd be a lot of expenses that maybe we're not, yeah.
Your
ready
utility
for, but-
runs would have to be accommodated. Your parking, you have to how much parking you require. We have an off-street parking code. We do. And so we have to analyze all that.
Handicap, this and that,
Right,
all
and
that.
I mean, that would be a major
Yeah.
undertaking,
It would
but
be.
it would be like a commercial type zone thing,
Mhm.
I'm sure, but I think it'd be neat for.
Oh, I do too. I think it'd be
Yeah.
very popular.
So your farm. Okay.
That's all we got. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Can I get your guys' phone number?
Yeah,